Yeah, some people come through and they're surprised because it's often a wall of ladies in there, which is awesome.
A big part of what we do for Beervana is making sure that we're making beers that you can't otherwise get in supermarkets and whatnot. It's a great kind of time to demonstrate what we're doing.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
You're not going to have to use any of this, are you?
I'll say 100 million. I'll say that.
That's the personal salary that you'll need before you move.
Absolutely.
Right, perfect. we'll just put word out and see if we get any bites. Don't hold your breath, okay? This show is completely independent. I've got to get me some of that.
Yeah. And when I first tried it, it tasted horrible.
Hi, it's David here at 2 Weeks in Creative Endeavour with a quick announcement about this second August bonus episode. As a growing Love Not Money project, we share stories and insights of a broadening range of good people positively contributing to making Wellington and New Zealand an even more awesome place to live and work. This episode features Garage Project, one of our most popular, with guests and co-hosts, craft brewers. Just to be really clear, this is not an advert for either Garage Project, Beervana or any other brand mentioned. For full disclosure, we do occasionally receive beers to taste from them and other craft breweries, and this is clearly stated in each episode. Garage Project is a 6-year young Wellington-based independent craft brewery. I caught up with 2 members of their team to uncover some of the magic that's been keeping us entertained and refreshed over the last 2 years. I'm also really grateful for episode support from BizDojo, Collider Wellington and our Patreon patrons. If you're ever wondering where's the best place to get work done in New Zealand, I'd suggest you look up bizdojo.com. For smart people, look no further than the Collider Wellington programme of events. Links to both of these are in the show notes. Very, very fortunate to be hanging with 2 people who I thought I would never be sitting down with. On my right, I have George, or also known as Gina Daroux, Cellar Door manager. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
The second, which just quickly want to introduce, which is Kieran Burns. Now, Kieran is Garage Project's brew team leader. Is that about right?
Yeah, brew manager, brew team leader. You can call me whatever you want, really. I make beer happen.
You make beer happen. You make people happen to make beer, right?
That's true, yeah. Sweet. So shall we crack into this?
Yeah, Kieran, just give us a quick intro what brew number 1 is.
So the first one we're trying today is called Trois Fleurs, 3 flowers. So it is a grisette style, a garden grisette. A grisette is a saison in style, but it is slightly lighter. This style of grisette has a sour element to it. So it's been fermented with saison yeast and then blended with a slight portion of sour. And then it has an element of flowers in it, so it gives it quite a nice floral aroma. It's relatively smooth in flavour, nice sharp sour hit to it. But then the tart citrusy farmhouse ale comes through as well. So it's quite an interesting beer. It's going in can for the Burger Challenge for Wellington on a plate this year. So we'll give that one a try.
Cheers. Ooh. The interesting thing with the Burger Welly competition is that you've got a number of brews, some of which are complementary and some of which are contradictory.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I just really like that. Well, you want something that's going to make it sort of nice and easy, or you want something to be challenged with.
Yeah, food pairing is fantastic in that respect. You know, it works with wine, it works with whiskey, it works with beer, and it's really fun to try and do that thing of comparing or contrasting, or that kind of thing makes it what Wellington on Plate is about, really. So I mean, with this one, it's got lemon verbena, chamomile and calendula, so quite a nice combination of things. Quite an interesting beer, this one.
My initial impression is it's kind of like really crisp and quite tart.
Yes, yeah.
And that just like cuts through,
and
it makes me feel like, I'm going to go back for a bit more.
Yeah, sharp will cut through grease. So if you're eating a burger that's got a lot of fat content.
And Sarah's got you on the judging team, hasn't she?
I believe she does, actually, yeah. My hope was that I was actually going to be able to try all of the burgers before the whole thing started. We were going to film something for the Garage Project, social media. We were going to use all of the restaurants in town, and I was going to go to every single one and try all of their burgers. Unfortunately, cutting in, 120 different restaurants into one clip wasn't going to really work.
We usually ask people, where would they drink this?
If it's well received, then we will see it again at some point next year. We'll likely make it around springtime. The Saison style generally comes out around that time of year because it is quite sharp and it is quite easy drinking in the sunshine.
One other thing we always normally do on the show is we ask our guests to score the beers out of 5. Unless you really want to, I'm going to excuse you that, because you are the person who brewed it. If you were to score it, I'm not suggesting that you would, what scale would you use?
A very non-traditional one. It would be likely something like 6 hexagons out of 8.5 triangles. Something like that.
You're just telling me earlier about a bit of your journey to Garage Project.
Yes.
Starting out at Arrow Bake,
Yep.
thinking about New World, and then Pete, one of the co-owners, somehow convinced you, twisted your arm. You sound like you were
so
really
difficult,
really reluctant, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was what, 4 or 5 years ago?
So it was 5 years ago now. Yeah, I was working at Arrow Bake, managing the cafe, and I kind of finished my degree and was a wee bit confused and disillusioned with what I wanted to do with my life, and I wanted to move into something that would be a career, something a wee bit different. So I decided I'd just try and look for work in the liquor industry. Craft beer was starting to take off in Wellington, and Garage Project was just setting up. They had been making 24 beers in 24 weeks and releasing them at Hashigozaki, and the result was great, and they had managed to get enough money to buy their own 1,000 litre brew kit and a few tanks, and were starting to set up an Arrow. So I'd take coffee across the road to them every day, bring them pastries and whatnot, and my real hope was that I'd get some free beer out of the whole situation. But actually what happened was I met Pete down at Southern Cross one night. I'd already quit my job at Arrow Bake, and I'd secured another job at a liquor outlet in town, and he said, do you want to come and work in the Cellar Door for us? So I walked in, and I had a beard, so I got the job straight away. Didn't even look at my CV. Yeah, things have changed a little bit now. But
how big was the team back then?
Back then there was 5 of us, so grown from 5 to 55 now. We're pretty full on these days. Yeah.
And how many countries do you export to now as well?
At this point, I believe we're exporting to 5 countries. That includes Norway, Sweden, the United States, Australia, and we're just cracking into some of the Asian markets as well. So it's really, really taking off. We've just sent a container over to London for a big beer festival over there. It's really, really cracking on. Quite exciting times.
Yeah, totally. This is a Love Not Money project that I've done for like almost 2 years now.
Yep. And
it's kind of dedicated to being useful to sharing the stories of people doing great work and kind of making a positive difference in the community. And the really weird thing is that we created this format 2 years ago, and we thought, let's bribe people with some craft beer because that'll get their attention and bring them in. And we can look back over the 100 or so beers that we tasted, and there's quite a lot of Garage Project beers in there. Universally, I can only think of one beer that we didn't love from Garage Project, and it's not just us being biased, but it's that sense that you've got a really distinctive brand on your hands, and like
absolutely,
and it's like it's completely yourselves, and you're not beholden to anybody else yet. But you know what I mean? It's like you're having to pay the bank manager, but it's still like you've got the control.
Absolutely. That's a big part of what we're about. So the main thing about that really is recipe design. So, the beers themselves are fantastic in terms of flavors. The profiles you get out of them, it's all to do with the recipe design, the original recipes coming out of Pete, who hired me. He's a very creative guy. He's working in the beer industry for over 15 years. Very clever, great mind for what tastes great in beer and what we can do with it. So that's really about what Garage Project is doing, is trying to make new and interesting things, but that wouldn't work if there was no quality involved. So lots of places are trying to do new beers, but some of them don't come out as well as they expect. Obviously a big part of what we do is great marketing. The artwork and all that sort of stuff really sells the beer on the shelf, but when it comes down to people drinking it, it really does count for a lot that his design of the recipes are fantastic and keep things really interesting, which makes it interesting for me to work here as well.
It's not like you make it easy for yourselves though.
No.
And this is one of the things that always, like, it really grabs my attention, that you like, yeah, we could go the easy route, we could go the mass route, we could just make more of this stuff, we could like sell off the back of our brand, but you don't.
As I say, a lot of beers are massively a labour of love. You know, we put a lot of work and effort into it, and funnily enough, some of them we don't charge anymore for that labour of love. It can take a hell of a lot longer to make some of them, but you know, it is totally that thing of just trying to produce new and interesting flavours for people to try out. And if you put it way more expensive, like we're already premiumising a lot of the beers, so we have to be, you know, straightforward with that. But you know, the ones that are quite difficult to make often aren't the most expensive, and that's, you know, indicative of the fact that Pete really wants people to try them out and see what they like.
So we managed to wrangle George back.
Hello, sorry.
It's like she's the chief executive, in fact.
No, just very flustered.
No. So busy day for you. Just really interested to ask a little bit about your work at the Cellar Door.
I think it's a really interesting space. I think its primary function is to be somewhere, you know, people drink the beer and they feel reconnected to our story and the narratives because there is so much going on all the time, and it's a place where they can come in and actually talk to people and become a part of it. You know, it's definitely not us presenting the beer to people, it's them coming to us and we get to really engage with them and be excited together. And
in the lair of the beast.
That's it, yeah.
It's just kind of like you walk in the door and you're hooked.
If I had to, yeah, that's it. If I had to, I would call it a community hub, definitely, and that works on many levels. It's the Garage Project community, fans of our beer, people who've never heard of us before, the Arrow Valley community, the Wellington community, and our trade customers as well get to come in. And Over Wellington on a Plate is a really good example because Wellington is just being so thrashed all the time, and we make sure that we can get people's backs if everyone sells out of all their beer, and then they can come. We're like, don't worry, we got you, grab some. Everyone's in a panic, but it's such a great time of year, and it really highlights how like that little ecosystem is really functional. It's cool to feel like it's a part of it and we can help.
Talk to me briefly about your crew.
My crew?
Yeah, your crew in the Cellar Door.
I love them so much. My right-hand man is a lovely lady called Emma. She's very intelligent, practical, knowledgeable, great at drinking beer, as we all are.
That's kind of like a bit of a prerequisite, isn't it?
Oh,
to
definitely.
Be honest.
Yeah, it is. It's quite funny. Yeah, some people come through and they're surprised because it's often a wall of ladies in there, which is awesome. And they'll have you can see, they don't say anything, but a lot of the time there'll be a little split second double take, and then they'll get back in the swing of things and come and chat to us and things.
Have you got any women brewers?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Excellent.
So we've got one full-time female brewer, Carrie, and then we also have a cellar hand by the name of Charlotte, and we're also looking at hiring another one. Female brewers are few and far between, and it's not for any reason, but I think it's just a male-dominated industry in general. Yeah.
I interrupted you talking about your crew.
It's interesting. We have a really good core of people who've been at GP for a long time, and you know they're invested long time. There's 3 full-timers, me and Emma, who's my 2IC, and then Lucy, who came to us from Goldings. We're really lucky to have her. You know, that community is still in play. It's pretty awesome. And then we tend to get, especially over the summer, people through shorter time, and we have our uni students as well. Whether you're full-time or part-time, everyone's really excited to be a part of things and makes the effort to come to tasting sessions with Pete or little brew times. And yeah, it's good. It's a good vibe.
You don't want to miss tasting sessions with
No,
Pete.
you don't.
Last time he pulled out a $1,000 bottle of beer. So.
I know, and then one half. Yeah.
Superb. All right, open floor question. One of the things that Garage Project strikes me quite strongly that they do really well is the collabs, the collaborations. You've done collabs with like quite a big range of people, haven't you? How do you go about choosing who you collab with? Or do they come to you and say, let's do a thing?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, you know. We're lucky in that Joss does a lot of traveling internationally, and he is very good at making excellent connections. Like, it's pretty incredible to watch him.
He's a bit of a mixer, is he?
He is. He definitely is. But just because he's...
Kieran, I should point out, on the audio is pissing himself over the other side of the
diplomatic.
No, but because of that, because he's kind of put his life on hold to go and push GP out into the international realm, that things like that Sierra Nevada collaboration come about, which was incredible.
The interesting thing as well is that Sierra Nevada are coming over to Beervana for the first time as well, aren't they?
Yeah, super exciting. Having Sierra will be a great addition to it too. I mean, Beervana has grown so much, and getting other breweries from around the world in really improves the experience for the people who are coming along, paying so much to get in. Seeing breweries from other countries really adds to that experience. Yeah.
Give us an inside track on Beervana plans for Garage Project.
So this year's theme is a cabinet of curiosities. So the idea is behind what we've made is making sure that we've got beers that are super curious, super unique, and very unusual. So we've used some quite unusual ingredients. We can actually try one of them now if you like.
Oh, go on then, twist my arm.
So we've got another beer here called Sintamani. So Sintamani is based on the idea of a Sintamani stone, which is traditional in Buddhist culture. It's talking about a stone of luck. It's meant to have mystical power. So in this beer, we've used Buddha's hand. The Buddha's hand is essentially a citrus fruit which has tentacles, straw color, slight amount of haze, and then a large amount of this Buddha's hand citrus in it. So super tasty, super citrusy, and really nice flavour to it. So it is one of the lower alcohol options that we're offering at Beervana this year, and it is quite an interesting beer. So we'll give that a try.
Alrighty, yeah, cheers.
Yeah, it's great citrus nose on it.
Oh,
yeah. So quite easy drinking, but nice hoppy flavour, then really citrusy bite to it.
What do you reckon, George?
Very, very drinkable. Quaffable. That's a good word
Quaffable.
for it. Yeah, quaffable.
We decided we're not allowed to use the word drinkable anymore because it's kind of the excuse for it's a beer. It's
of course it's drinkable.
What else is it?
It's another one that
Suckable. I'm trying to start people using suckable instead of crushable or anything like that. It's suckable now. Start using suckable.
It's the kind of beer I want to have a gin on the side of, on a summer's afternoon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A big part of what we do for Beervana is making sure that we're making beers that you can't otherwise get in supermarkets and whatnot. It's a great kind of time to demonstrate what we're doing.
One of the fundamental things I really want to... It's so difficult to tease apart in the few minutes we have left, but it's like, where do these ideas come from? It's
quite challenging thing. I think Pete is quite the genius in all of this, and we have to really give him credit for what he does. He's very clever in terms of recipe design, and we're eternally grateful for that. A lot of the beers that we're coming out with are inspired by food. A lot are inspired by music, and we try and look for things in our environment that we can play around with. So, for example, we're starting this new thing down at Marion Street at our Wild Workshop, and that's all about wild yeasts, trying to inoculate beers with yeasts that are found naturally. So we've used a whole bunch of wild flowers in some of our beers, and it's things like that. Trying new things, trying something interesting. Sometimes it won't work out, sometimes it will, but for the most part, at least a certain segment of society are going to enjoy it. Perhaps not everyone, but that's kind of the aim of it. We don't want everyone to like it, because if everyone likes it, it's probably pretty boring.
On the one hand, you got the mass market, right? But on the other hand, it should be called something like mass specialization. It's kind of like, because you're not a small brewer anymore.
No, we're not.
You've got interest in B Studio, 55 staff, more than 10 times bigger in staff terms than you were, exporting to multiple countries.
Yeah.
How do you manage to hang on to that essence? Or is that just a small fraction of the beers that you sell, which is the brand, and then there's still this massive sea of normal beers? not that there would ever be a normal Garage Project beer.
Well, I mean, I think from the very beginning we were set out to make sure we're not making just a core range of beers. We're able to play around with these new and interesting ideas, and we always aim to have a new kind of set of beers out, and in that we're making new beers every week. So in the last year we made over 50 brand new beers. This year we're aiming for 60, probably slightly more than that in the end, and that's resulted in a range of over 200 different styles. So it is pretty crazy.
I'm sitting here sort of laughing to myself, almost in disbelief, that out of such a small operation as it still is, you are producing admittedly relatively small batches, but of such a wide variety of things. What happens when one doesn't work?
We've only ever had one batch of beer which hasn't worked, and that's because our kettle completely broke. Partway through a boil, the gas burner completely stopped. Our guy came back in, fixed it, and when it came back on, no one stirred it, so the bottom of the kettle was completely burnt. The sugars had all settled to the bottom, and it was still. So that burnt, and so unfortunately we had to dispose of that one. But for the most part, we haven't had to chuck any beer away, which is great.
This is a bit of a sly question, but like launch a new beer. Brewing team, do you have a bit of a sweepstake as to how popular do you think it's going to be?
It's something I might start, actually. I mean, I always have my own assumptions, and that comes from being, in the beer industry and knowing people who work in it.
Was there ever any debate whether to have a different hashtag and for it to be try something weird as opposed to try something new?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure there would have been some sort of discussion about that. I think try something new really settled quite nicely with Pete because, it is about him trying something new as well.
There's this theory that everyone's got their number. Somebody will say to you, here's $500 million, sell it to us.
I see what you mean.
What's your number? And I appreciate you may not be...
Yep, I'm not one of the owners of the business, so
totally,
I can be honest.
Yeah, but it's like from your perspective as brew manager.
Yep.
Do you think that's even a question that people are able to ask?
I think for the brewery founders, I think that's a really interesting question. I don't think at this point any amount of money would be enough to make them give over control of the business. It's just like a child to them. So giving it up would be a non-existent option. I'll say 100 million. I'll say that.
That's the personal salary that you'll need before you move.
Absolutely.
Right, perfect. we'll just put word out and see if we get any bites. Don't hold your breath, okay? All right, intro beer number 3.
Okay, so this is the Golden Spiral. It is one of the beers for Beervana. This beer is made by the Fibonacci sequence. So that is, the sequence of numbers that dictates a lot of things in nature. So you see a snail, the spiral on its side is based on the Fibonacci sequence. Well, I should say the Fibonacci sequence is based on it, not the other way around. I don't think snails are checking.
Snails are good at maths.
But this beer is made using the Fibonacci sequence, so 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on and so forth. So this beer uses a huge amount of hop. It has, I'm just going to run through all of them because it's quite fun. It has Pacific Jade, Magnum, Southern Cross, Rakow, Simcoe, Amarillo, Vic Secret, Centennial, and Equinox, Nelson Sauvin, and Galaxy.
Is there such a thing as hop porn? Is that
this would be
porn?
The other one would be our amazing Hop Boy, which was made with 63 different varieties of hops, many of which didn't have any name. But this is an interesting beer because it is based on that Fibonacci sequence, which made it actually the most hoppy beer we've ever made. The hop quantity is higher than any beer we've ever made. And when I first tried it, it tasted horrible. It was so bitter that you couldn't actually enjoy the beer. But over time, with rounding out of the flavours and the bitterness decreasing, it's actually come quite nice. It's quite an aromatic beer, quite a nice flavour. The bitterness is certainly forward, but it's not overwhelming. So this is our big hoppy offering for this year at Beervana. So you hopheads out there, the people who love resin, this is the beer you want to drink. It's crazy hoppy.
When do hops become poisonous? At what concentration?
In fact, they're inherently poisonous for humans, and that's why some of you might end up with quite a lot of sneezing after drinking beers, or you may end up with a massive hangover after drinking craft beer, because inherently craft beer doesn't actually have a worse hangover than general, green bottle beers. In fact, most of those green bottle beers have a far worse hangover because of the fusel alcohols you end up with them. Whereas the craft beer, I think, generally speaking, what you're getting is a hop hangover because they make you sleepy. You can put them in your pillow and you'll get a better sleep than usual. It's quite an interesting thing.
So I just kind of wonder whether there's that interesting connection between, we've got them with the hops, and try something new.
Yeah.
Do you know? Yeah. And try the next thing. And I'm not just talking about GPs.
Yeah.
I'm talking about all craft brewers in New Zealand.
I think you're absolutely right on that. It is something that I would compare to drinking coffee for the first time. I think a lot of people start with drinking hot chocolates and then move on to a mochaccino and then graduate onto drinking a latte or a flat white, and then eventually often we'll end up with a long black. And it's that transition between it's not quite what I wanted.
Just keep to yourself what you were doing last night.
That transition between being able to enjoy that bitterness of the coffee and developing your palate into the point where you actually enjoy it more than just enjoying something sweet. So that thing of having a hop forward beer can change your palate to the point where you start to enjoy that, but that opens you up to trying lots of interesting and new things which you otherwise wouldn't.
George, you're going to have all these in the cellar door, aren't you?
We will, post Beervana and the Wellington on the plate.
Kieran, start with you. Analog object, item or thing that at the moment you can't live without. What would it be?
I would say, especially for my job, it would be a whiteboard marker. I use a whiteboard marker on a daily basis.
That's a really good answer.
And it's actually quite a good symbol for what I do as a job.
George, if there's a favourite analog object, item or thing that you can't live without at the moment, what would it be?
I'm sure there are plenty, but the first one that came to mind was, in a broad sense, my bed. I put a lot of time and energy into making that a beautiful nest of joy. But to be more specific,
joy. That could go so wrong so easily.
I know, actually, post speaking, I'm regretting a little bit.
This is kind of like getting deep into the minds of Garage Project, basically.
End of a hard day. Sink into that puppy. Oh, God.
A little bit of talk about beer, but mostly it's about bed making.
and we have practical people like myself and very esoteric people like George.
Yeah, I'm obviously very engaged with what I'm doing.
Just quick shout outs to any other people, organisations or charities. It could be anything, just a couple. Kieran.
There's tons of them, obviously, in terms of the people we've collabed with, Flight Coffee, People's Coffee, a bunch of the people from Whittaker's and from Wellington Chocolate Factory, in terms of supplying some of the ingredients, Cry Malt for providing our malt, New Zealand Hops for providing our hops, and then tons of overseas breweries who have been involved with that, people who helped us start out, Dom from Hashigozaki, obviously, Corey from Brew House and the other guys at Brew House, fantastic group of people who have helped us out in a lot of ways, Southern Cross, Andrew and Gary at Southern Cross, you guys are fantastic, but there's tons more. We've had so much help along the way, so we've got to be paying our homage to so many of them, and we always try and look after them, but they've certainly more than looked after us.
How about you, George? Any people you want to give shout outs to, whether professionally or personally?
Well, like he says, we are very lucky to be ensconced in a community that is incredibly supportive and really inspirational. I guess, anyone who we come to with an idea and we're like, hey, so imagine this. And they're like, yes, let's do that. There are a lot of people who are really keen to do exciting things together. Brazen do our merch or our screen printing. The Ara Valley Community Council are doing an amazing job of fostering this community. It's quite a unique little pocket of Wellington and New Zealand. And ALC, of course, so we tend to do an annual collaboration with those guys as well, who do beautiful, beautiful work.
What would be your dream job if you weren't able to do this?
Obviously a rock star. I think anyone who's spoken to me will attest that's a missed calling. A
little birdie might have said, and you're going to kill them later, that you used to be in a band called the Death Riders.
Not the right name, and I'm not going to correct you. So
go on, George. What is it? What is it?
Yeah, well, I dabbled. You don't just have dreams and not chase them. So I gave it a whack. I'm not going to correct you, my friend.
I'm going to look that up right now.
That's a very badass name. Maybe we should have made it that. It was a good time. Yeah.
You're big on bicycles. Talk to me about your bicycle.
I have spent my life telling people that I can ride a bike, she said defensively, but I'm just not very confident on one. And then Calvin, who is the spirit of Ara Valley in many ways, he's a beautiful man. He works for Bicycle Junction as well, and he kept coming past there a couple of months ago, and he kept saying, I've got this bike. It's just right up your alley. It's really easy going. It's beautiful. We're restoring it. You should come by and see it sometime. And I was kind of like, maybe it's time that I'm got a bike because GP are very supportive of bikes. They try and get people to ride them all the time, phase out cars. Firstly, because we don't have any space for people to be driving cars to work. There's nowhere for them to be. Now that I've got my trusty steed, Wild Stallion, that's the name of the bike.
Kieran is dying quietly. I'm enjoying this so much.
It's so rickety. Like, I'll be, when you
Calvin
end up on
said
the
that
footpath.
was the right bike for you too.
No, I know, but
This
it's very
rickety old bike.
low to the
Shit,
ground.
but it's fine.
No, it's beautiful. It's vintage.
I'm gonna take the heat off you for a second because Kieran, doing a little bit of background research.
Oh, yeah?
Basically asking around. I hear you're the king of garage project hugs.
Oh, that's an
Very
interesting
true.
one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
You want to give it a whirl?
Afterwards, definitely. Once I stop riding the craziness that is this audio kit. But it's not like, it's not asking for a friend or anything, but just kind of like...
I often get compliments on my hugs and my laugh as well. My laugh is something that is quite distinctive for me, I think.
Perfect. But like New Zealand's not got a great history of New Zealand men being kind of good with like body contact.
No.
So talk to me about the whole hug thing.
I mean, I don't want to get too philosophical on this, but I think, to be fair, New Zealand men are quite closed off. Emotionally speaking, a lot of New Zealand men really have a lot of trouble showing emotion and sharing in what they feel about things. And I really, really want to be not one of those people. I think it is quite damaging for your own emotional health, your own mental health, and that's no good for anyone. And that can often come out in the form of violence towards others and, being quite an aggressive person. I don't want to be one of those people. I want to be a happy and healthy person. So I'm always pretty forward with my emotions. I wear my heart on my sleeve and make sure people know how I'm feeling so they don't bug me too much. So I do try to make sure that people feel loved and make sure I share that. That's a big part of my life. So yeah.
I don't know if I get reactions, but I hug people willy-nilly.
Yeah,
so.
you do.
You gave a great hug this morning. I love that. That was so lovely. I really
Yeah, see, there
appreciate
you go.
that.
I don't think we're in grey territory. That's fine, right? I
Great.
don't know. I wouldn't even think about that. But
As long as they don't feel a Mars bar in your pocket, you're all right.
All right, I've got a final run-out question for George, which you're going to kill me for. Rumour has it you're pretty into your sewing.
She showed up yesterday in the most fantastic outfit I'd ever seen.
Hey, so it's been really, really great hanging out with the both of you. I really appreciate giving way more than the time I said we were going to take. Really enjoyed also tasting 3 of the brews you're going to be taking to BeervanaNZ next week. Kieran Burns and Gina Daroux, also known as George. It's been super fun hanging out with you two today. Really appreciate giving time. Have
Absolutely.
an awesome BeervanaNZ.
thank you.
Any advice for people who are going to BeervanaNZ?
Don't eat. Oh, I was going to say don't eat before you go because you need room, but do eat before you go.
Definitely eat
Don't
before you
listen
go.
to me. Be responsible.
Drink plenty of water.
Yeah.
Make sure you look after yourself. It is a fun time, but
Yep.
going home absolutely hammer smashed and is not the
No.
greatest idea.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, look after yourself, be
Pace
safe,
yourself.
and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Will you be taking your safety glasses to BeervanaNZ?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I always wear safety glasses. Safety
Yeah.
first, guys. Safety
Yeah.
first.
You never know what could be coming at your eyeballs out there,
Hey, it's David here at 2 Weeks in Creative Endeavour. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Kieran and George were just super fun to hang out with. The audio show that is 2 Weeks in Creative Endeavour is 50 in late August 2017. Our half-century 50th long-form episode publishes later this month and features Sam from Little Yellow Bird, an ethical uniforms business, and Jenny from the Misprint Company, repurposing waste paper into quality notebooks. Both are Wellington-based social enterprises, and they'll also both be at the upcoming Social Enterprise World Forum in Christchurch in September. Next up, we're chatting with Alina and Josef from the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, a social enterprise dedicated to incubating solutions to global problems from New Zealand to make a lasting and positive impact on the world. Beyond then, we're scheduling with Guy Ryan, CEO of Inspiring Stories, founder of the annual Festival for the Future Conference and Young New Zealander of the Year 2015. And there's an election cycle happening in New Zealand presently. We're chatting with senior figures from the major political parties to ask them their perspectives and policies related to social enterprise. These conversations will be squeezing into the existing episode schedule, dependent on how many of them we can schedule with. We're 50% of the way there, having confirmed both New Zealand Greens and Labour, with just National and New Zealand First yet to reply and schedule. Your feedback and comment is always most welcome. Reach us at TwicePodcast on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at twicepodcast@gmail.com. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge support from BizDojo, Collider Wellington, and our Patreon patrons, without whom this show would not publish. Cheers. Say somebody wants a job at Garage Project. What's the best way of getting your attention? I'm not asking for me. Don't worry.
I think you've succeeded. So,
in a sanctum.
That's a super difficult question. Like, we're obviously a business which has quite a lot of growing roles, quite a lot of people who want to be growing in their own professional careers. So people who want to go from the Cellar Door, say, onto something like sales or something like brewing. So it is quite a difficult market to break into.
Well,
my best
extreme
advice,
whiteboarding.
yeah, that's true.
My best advice, especially if you want to work in brew or pack, is something along those lines. It would be get a bit of training. Study up, use resources online, use people who are involved in the brewing industry already. Try and get your foot in the door in that way. But if you're wanting to move into the hospo side of what we do, which is quite diverse, I think George will probably be the best to answer this question.
I would say just come hang out with
Pop
us.
in.
Don't just drop off your CV once. Come in. Have some tasters. We don't ask you to buy beer all the time, but get to know the team, We're very friendly.
I just do have one note about that, and we did have one guy come in once. He had just visited the Liquorland, which was the mill back then. He'd just visited the mill, and he popped into Garage Project with an 18 box of double brown, and he was like, I'm looking for a job, and dropped off his CV, didn't say anything else, and left. That is not the way to do it, funnily enough, but he was the most impressive applicant I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Nice. I got one final question which I've crowdsourced, which is to George. You must see quite a few people come through the Cellar Door. That's probably the polite way of saying it. What is the most outrageous question you've ever been asked?
Oh, man.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Oh, man.
Even that you can't say on radio.
There's some real good ones.
There are.
Then we can do the one that you can say on radio. Like, do you get people coming in a bit tanked up already? That must be
Oh,
like,
heck yeah. It was quite
Absolutely.
funny after last year's Beervana because we were doing our 5th birthday and we gave out crowns, but it was the perfect way to just spot people as soon as they walked in the door and we were like, hey, mate, looking to
How
get
you
some
feeling?
beer? We get questions like, oh, do you have the dead canary? Oh, yeah. What about the supercharger? We get asked for supercharger constantly. Yeah.
that's pretty mild.
It is very mild.
Let's get into the details. Come on.
There are some other good ones. People asking to fill milk bottles or just juice bottles with their beer.
Mayonnaise
That's quite
jars.
good. Yeah,
Yeah,
mayonnaise
definitely.
jars. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to think of something really worthy.
Do you have any mountain bikers coming and go, can you just fill up the old bladder?
I haven't filled the bladder. I don't think
I've never filled a bladder.
Yeah.
I'm fairly sure
I wouldn't be
we
surprised. We get a lot of mountain bikers coming in straight off the trails who have forgotten that at some point they fell really hard and they'll come in and decide and kind of put their forearm up to think about what they want to drink and there'll just be blood dripping everywhere and you're kind of like, hey mate, you're grossing me out. Whoa!
Do you want to call you an ambulance as opposed to pouring you a beer?
Yeah.
I prefer them to the lycra-clad street cyclists though.
Oh goodness. Hey.
If it says I ride on your shirt, you can get out of the Cellar Door. Thanks. I know you're right. I can see your sausage.
Road is not welcome here.
Yeah. No.
I'd never say that.
I feel like I'm going to let you down. I can't. There's a lot of, but I don't want to take the piss out of people because there's no stupid questions. If you don't know, you don't know.
Let's look at it a different way then. If you have any advice for people coming into the Cellar Door, what's the best way to get the best out of you and your team?
Be excited. Be happy to be there, or not.
Come in with an open mind. Try things out.
Don't come in and we know what we're doing. We want to give you a nice time. So if we recommend trying something, just give it a sip. You don't have to drink it all, but we're all about kind of trying new things. And we're pretty good at finding it in. If you feel like you're not a beer drinker, you just haven't had the right beer for you. You haven't. So come and let us show you the way.
And don't expect the same beers to be on all the time.
Oh yeah.
Why don't you have pernicious weed on at the moment?
Yeah.
That's the worst for me.
Hey, so the one thing that really annoys me about Garage Project, just waiting for the daggers. Yeah, there we go. And that is the taster blockers. You know the taster blockers down on the cellar door? There's like 12 of them, and they'll just kind of come in and they'll invest your time in their pleasure for about like an hour,
and then buy one flagon.
It's almost like you need like a fast track lane. Yeah. Just for locals that know exactly what they want. They've already seen on the board, and they just sort of slide it around the side. Yeah. Minimal conversation, knowing that you're busy and the rest of your crew are busy. What do you say? Can we do that?
It's definitely something we try to do. We know that there becomes, and when you say locals who know what they want, David angrily tapping his foot in the background. We'll do our best, I think.
I am joking, and you give me such a serious answer to it.
Okay, well, no, you can.
Beautiful. I had a bit of a chat with Ash over at 91 last night. She said, ask him what's his favourite existing brew to actually brew, and what's his least favourite one?
Yeah, those are good questions. They're challenging questions, I can tell you that much. Well, you know, we've got quite a few interesting beers, and making beer in and of itself is a repetitive process. When you do it over and over again, you get really used to the ins and outs of what you must do at what time and that sort of thing. So making a beer fun to make really counts for what kind of hop additions you are adding and what kind of other adjuncts we put into it. So a lot of our beers have a heavy amount of adjuncts. We do try to make things interesting by putting in weird and wonderful things. So I'll start off with the least favourite one to make, because it does contain quite a few weird and wonderful things. It is quite strenuous to make because of the high amount of adjuncts, and that's Umami Monster. So Umami Monster is a beer that was made for the Great Australian Beer Spectacular, a big beer festival which takes place in Melbourne, Sydney, and now in Auckland as well. But when we did it, it was for Melbourne only, and it was made with the flavours of umami, essentially. So to begin with, we make dashi, which is the base for most of your Japanese soups and that sort of thing. Umami is said to be the next flavour. So what we get is a whole bunch of kelp. It is dried kelp. So we're essentially using katsuobushi and bonito fish flakes to make this beer. So the katsuobushi goes into the
You guys are crazy. I mean that as a compliment.
So it goes in there, and we boil it for a short amount of time, make this dashi, which is that seaweed sort of flavour, and then we add the dashi, the fish flakes, the fermented fish flakes, and that adds this massive fish element to it. The reason it's quite strenuous to make is because fish flakes are quite thin, and we need tons and tons of them. So we order in about 20-30 boxes of these things, massive boxes, what you'd see your cornflakes arrive in. They get put into bags and then hung inside one of the tanks. Then we have to bag up the seaweed as well, and it produces the most putrid smell you can think. It really doesn't smell very nice at all, and so strenuous to make. A lot of effort goes into it. It comes out tasting fantastic, which is the main thing, and a lot of what we do is just a labour of love. So you have to take the good with the bad.
And what about your favourite beer?
My favourite one to make would have to be Angry Peaches. So we don't make Angry Peaches all that often. It is quite a hop forward beer. The reason I enjoy making it is because it is super tasty, and also because of the hop additions. Like we use 4 main hop additions near the end of the boil. So while the beer is boiling, we get all this aroma out of the Amarillo hop, which comes from the United States. Super hop forward flavour, really interesting flavour profile, which gets remnants of stone fruit. Quite flavoursome and quite tasty. But the additions don't need to be weighed out at all, which is quite exciting for me. When you want to make beer fun, it's quite good to make it simple.
Totally.
Sometimes that's all you want. There's one other one I should mention, and that's Red Rocks. Red Rocks is a fantastic beer to make as well, and a super labour of love. Super intensive beer. Is made as a Stein beer, so that's a traditional style where hot rocks are added to the wort of the beer. They're super heated to up to 700-800 degrees, and then we run the wort through that pile of rocks and superheat it, so it flash caramelizes the sugar, and then we run it through a hop back, and it becomes the most flavoursome beer. It's fantastic. So we're going to make that very soon.
Nice.
Yeah, you'll see it down in Aro. There'll be a fire going in the forecourt. It's fantastic fun. We'll be cooking sausages.
Hey, so I've got some warm-up questions for both of you. George, what's your first, worst and best jobs?
My best would definitely be I worked at Spookers for a couple of years. You know, the haunted house up in south of Auckland, Kingseat. It's in an old mental hospital.
It's got quite the reputation, hasn't it?
It does. But it was a great place to work. It was very laid back and easy. Pretty good time for a teenager.
What about your worst job?
See, I've worked in the hospitality industry for a long time, so I feel like saying my actual worst is going to be dobbing people in.
Dangerous idea in Wellington.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone
It's
will
a
hear
small
about
community.
You can do it in general terms if you like, without mentioning any names.
Hospitality, clearly.
Hospitality.
I wonder where George has worked in Wellington.
Oh, goodness me. I did have some very emotionally demanding bosses. One of them, when I was in my second year of uni, doing part-time, I'm putting quote marks up here, you can't see it obviously through the mic.
It always works on radio.
Kind of called me one day and said she had some things to take care of and disappeared for 3 months, and I was running the restaurant. This was about a week after I first got my first ever duty manager certificate. And she came back and I'd had to hire new staff, which, you know, I was 19. I had no idea what I was doing. She came back and she was like, do these guys have contracts or what's going on? And I was like, no, I just asked for help. I'm off the street. And I was like, great, turn up now. Put the food on the tables, you know. If you're going to be working hospitality, you have to have some really shocking experiences under your belt. And it's nice that Wellington can offer the spectrum. You know, if it was all peachy, it just wouldn't have any balls.
Fair.
Would it?
No, totally. What about...
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
What about the best?
Oh, the best hospitality job?
Best job ever so far.
Ever. Sorry.
And nudge.
Oh, definitely Garage Project. Wow, they are nice. And I'm never frightened here, which is good.
You can't see this, but I've got a knife to her throat.
The beauty of podcasts. So.
Yeah, totally. So genuinely this one?
Yeah.
If there's someone in like your formative life when you were a lot younger, like a teacher or like a youth work figure or something like that like was a real inspiration to you to be getting on making something in your life, is there anybody that kind of comes to mind?
It's a funny question when you're asking a brewer that, isn't it? It's like, is there someone who's helped form you into a brewer? Someone who's really inspired you to make alcohol?
It could be like in a totally negative sense. So someone says, you should go and get a proper job.
Yeah, you should
get a real
job. And then you've
completely rebelled against that and decided to become a brewer.
Yeah, because traditionally speaking, brewers aren't really highly sought after in the world. I mean, obviously my dad and my mum, they've really guided me on my path and made sure they've looked after me. And really made sure
there
that
are some
I'm supported.
tears going on across the table.
I've been supported in a great way in that respect, but also I'd have to say my nan. My nan was part of the Bray family, and she actually was a child to someone who ran a brewery, which is now the New World in Thorndon. So that was a massive brewery there, the Staples Brewery, and she was always kind of quite supportive of the fact that I was interested in brewing and really supported me along that path. So I'd have to say her, yeah.
A lifelong interest in beer. When was the first time you remember drinking beer?
I remember drinking beer when I was about 4 or 5 years old. My stepfather, who has now left the scene and I'm not a big fan of, gave me a taste of his tui, and it I thought was quite nice. I kind of enjoyed it. I liked carbonated drinks from quite early on, and continued to enjoy them for a long period of time. Yeah, right. That would be my first experience of beer, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's long enough ago that the statute of limitations doesn't apply and you're not going to get prosecuted, especially as you're not a politician.
No. That is pretty relevant today.
Yeah, totally. Inspirational figures in your formative life, or even negative inspirational figures who have encouraged you to go and do something completely different? Teachers, family, friends?
I'm pretty sure I did this alone,
eh? A lot of feelings right now.
Well, it's impossible not to have an impact on anyone's life, I guess. I don't want to steal kids' answer, but my parents have always been very supportive and helpful to me.
It's not really stealing an answer. I'm pretty sure everyone would say that.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually, because you mentioned Kier's Gary and Andrew down at Southern Cross, and I think they've had a really significant impact on me personally, and I think across Garage Project. Like, so many of the Garage Project family came from the Southern Cross family once and another, and I think they do something really amazing down there. They have definitely a great attitude. Very formative years for me working there.